Good evening, everyone. I welcome all of you to the 110th session of Science People online talk series, which began in August 2020. On behalf of Science People, I extend a special welcome to our speaker, Dr. Vandana from Michigan State University, and our moderator, Dr. Shalini Karwade from the University of Sydney. Today's topic is quantum biology, a subject that is especially relevant as 2025 is being celebrated worldwide as the quantum year. This session will begin as a conversation between our speaker and moderator, followed by an open QA where you, the audience, can ask your questions. Moderator will introduce the speaker and control the program. Dr. Shalini is a core member of our Science People group, familiar to many of you. She has delivered talks here earlier and moderated some sessions. She holds an integrated BSMS from ISER Trivandrum, a master's degree from USA, and a PhD from the University of Calgary, Canada, and is currently a postdoctoral researcher in Sydney University. Her field of research is quantum computing and open quantum systems. So let us continue to do the work together to raise science awareness and scientific temper in society. Now I invite Dr. Shalini to take over. Thank you.
താങ്ക് യു വെരി മച്ച്. എല്ലാവർക്കും നമസ്കാരം. ഞാൻ ഇന്നത്തെ പ്രോഗ്രാമിൻ്റെ മോഡറേറ്ററാണ്. എൻ്റെ പേര് ശാലിനി. ഇൻ്റർനാഷണൽ ഇയർ ഓഫ് ക്വാണ്ടത്തിൻ്റെ ഭാഗമായിട്ട് ഇന്നത്തെ നമ്മുടെ സയൻസ് പീപ്പിളിലെ ടോപ്പിക്ക് ക്വാണ്ടം ബയോളജിയെക്കുറിച്ചാണ്. ഒരു വളരെ ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റിംഗ് ആയിട്ടുള്ളൊരു ടോപ്പിക് തന്നെയാണിത്. അപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ സ്പീക്കറിനെ ഫോർമലി ഇൻട്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നതിന് മുന്നേ ഒരു കാര്യം പറയാനുള്ളത് എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ, സാധാരണയുള്ള നമ്മുടെ പരിപാടികളിൽ നിന്ന് വ്യത്യസ്തമായിട്ട് ഇന്നത്തെ പരിപാടി അധികവും ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലായിരിക്കും. നമ്മൾ സംഭാഷണത്തിൻ്റെ ആദ്യത്തെ ഭാഗം ഏകദേശം 40-45 മിനിറ്റ് നീണ്ടു നിൽക്കുന്നതാണ്. അത് ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലായിരിക്കും. അതിനുശേഷം ഓഡിയൻസിൻ്റെ കയ്യിൽ നിന്ന് നമ്മൾ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് എടുക്കുമ്പോൾ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് മലയാളത്തിൽ ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കാവുന്നതാണ്. സ്പീക്കർ അതിനുള്ള ഉത്തരം പക്ഷേ ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ തരുന്നതായിരിക്കും. അപ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് പരിപാടി തുടങ്ങാം. അതിനു മുന്നേ ഇന്നത്തെ സ്പീക്കറിനെ നമുക്കൊന്ന് ഫോർമലി ഇൻട്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യാം. So today we have with us Dr. Vandana Revati Venkateshwaran, who is an associate professor at Michigan State University, USA. Dr. Vandana completed her undergraduation in physics from Delhi University. Later she did a post-graduation in nuclear fusion and engineering physics from University of Ghent, followed by a PhD in evolutionary biology from University of Kiel, Germany. Later she worked as a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Vandana has been an active contributor to the All India People's Science movement, in particular the Tamil Nadu Science Forum. As a young kid, Vandana had also taken part in various activities of KSSP, including the Balutsav. Currently, she runs a public communication of science and technology social media platform called Biology Weekly. It can be accessed through Instagram and YouTube. I highly recommend you all to check it out. The content there is indeed quite interesting and engaging. Thank you, Dr. Vandana, for agreeing to be a part of our program today. So like I mentioned, today we'll be talking about how quantum physics integrates into biology and biological systems. This is, as Francis mentioned earlier, it's a very relevant topic, especially given the fact that we are celebrating International Year of Quantum in 2025. So I'll be asking a few questions to our speaker, and she'll be walking us through the nuances of quantum biology. So how about this? To start, maybe we can get familiarized with the basics. Maybe we can start out by unpacking some of the technical terms given in the title of today's program. So Vandana, could you please explain to us what quantum physics is and what quantum biology is? And Specifically, how is quantum biology different from other areas of biology?
Hi. So, so my answer would be like in the end, all the science fields are interconnected. So quantum biology, quantum physics, they're all based in the end on quantum science or quantum mechanics. So it is not like what physics is doing in biology or vice versa, but more of the fact that the same principles of nature or the same laws in nature um, can is used to explain both physics and also some biological phenomena. And that would be like the introduction for quantum biology. But it is true that the principles of quantum mechanics, it started from physics, or at least physicists or chemists brought it. The word quanta itself comes from the Latin word like quanto, meaning how much. So it's basically saying that uh, energy is in fixed packets or fixed amount. So when you go to the tiny quantum world where you have particles like electrons or the particles of light called photons, um, there the energy is not released and absorbed continuously. So classically, they thought energy can be released and absorbed continuously. But in 1900, it was Max Planck who discovered that, and he's the one who gave the word quanta, that energy is released and absorbed sometimes also in quanta or packets of energy. So that's the origin of the word quantum mechanics. Um, so it was a new way to study, or a new science in a way at that point, to study atoms and light and so on.
So could you give us a brief overview of quantum biology? I mean, I'll be asking more specific questions later, but just to set the tone.
So for quantum biology, the systems can sometimes be different in biology itself compared to physics. So biological systems are, for example, noisy. So the noisy, what we mean is that they're very random. It's not, I mean, a lot of physics in nature itself is mostly random, but in biological systems, it's even more random. And it's one might think it's very hard to bring the quantum mechanics and principles there, which is true. So one might think you cannot use quantum science in biology, but evolution and life has figured out how one can use some quantum principles in these kind of noisy or messy conditions. So just to mostly to survive and thrive. So there are many examples like the photosynthesis, and how the birds navigate, and how even simple things like when we smell a flower, immediately we get the smell, and things like that. Scientists have lately discovered that a lot of the answers lies in how in short intervals of time in biological systems, quantum principles are actually coming into effect.
That's indeed very interesting. Actually, I would like to focus on the last part of your answer. This may sound a little repetitive, but probably, I guess, worth discussing about again. So you mentioned how quantum physics is mainly about, or it's mainly associated with very small particles like atoms and molecules, whereas, like you mentioned, biological systems, you often think of them as being too wet or too warm or too noisy. So when we usually think of quantum physics, the picture that a lot of us often have in our mind is that of a highly controlled lab setting where we keep these tiny particles like atoms and electrons highly isolated and highly precisely controlled so that we can actually observe the quantum effects or quantum phenomena they exhibit. But on the other hand, we think about biological systems, it's not usually the case that we have such a precise control over what's going on within our body or like within an organism like that. So I mean, how exactly do we resolve this? Like, so how is it really possible that a system that's so complex and so beyond our control exhibit quantum mechanical effects that we otherwise only see in a very controlled laboratory setting?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So that helps to like distinguish the different fields too, a little bit. So what scientists used to believe is that biological systems are too warm, wet, and noisy for quantum physics or quantum mechanics to work. As you said, like for some quantum principles that we will address later, like superposition or entanglement, the systems are very delicate, and we need like very cold temperatures and very isolated systems. But biological systems are completely the opposite. So even like you mentioned, our body, it's warm, for example, and it's chaotic, it's busy, it's moving all the time. So it's not a surprise, but it's so the answer is that for quantum effects to survive in biological systems, we don't need it to always be a fixed system, always to not be noisy. Sometimes it's just a matter of few seconds, or even less than that. You just need a small fraction. The timing is what matters. So a small fraction of time is all you need for the quantum effects to take place. So nature basically doesn't need all these things to last too long. It only wants it to last just enough to get the job done. So it's like, an example is like, like a flash mob. So imagine there is a busy market, everything is so noisy, crowded. Suddenly, for maybe a minute or something, the dancers will come and do an organized dance performance. So it's kind of like that in biological systems. One can think like that. Just that timing is what matters.
That is indeed very interesting. So your point is that you just need a small amount of time for these processes to happen. It's a very interesting example that you bring up. So so is the take home message that it's all about the timing and the time scale? Is that so?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the time scale. Yeah, that matters.
That's quite interesting. Before we go too much into the depth of that answer, maybe at this point we would like to get a sense of what different phenomena that are out there in biology where quantum effects play a role. Could you give us an example of one such interesting phenomenon?
So let me even show like a picture or something. It's easier with. Yeah, so for example, one of my favorite examples is the maybe because I used to work near a lab that did this. So how do birds know how to fly thousands of miles without getting lost? So they call this navigation in birds, basically. So before, for a long time, obviously, they did not know that there was like some quantum effect playing a role in this. But with or without it, I mean, even now, scientists, they do these kind of experiments where they study these birds that navigate using the Earth's magnetic field. So we all know that the Earth has its own magnetic field. And these birds, they are basically able to use principles like quantum entanglement. I mean, it's not like they are doing the math, but the effect is being played there. So using or the principles like quantum entanglement help, let's say, the birds to navigate the Earth's magnetic field. And in that way, they're able to travel really long distances. Like it's not like they have a map with them, or the conditions are also really harsh. Like sometimes they go from cold to warm weather, things like that. But still, they make it. They always almost make it. And the recently only they found out that it's because they have something like, analogically we can say they have something like three compasses in their brains. So one allows them to extract information from the position of the sun in the sky. One uses patterns of the stars, and the main one is based on the Earth's always present magnetic field, because you don't need night or day for that. It's just always there. So how they do is basically they have a special molecule in their eye. So it helps them to sense the magnetic field through quantum effects. So this way they're able to sense or see the magnetic field, and they use this to guide their whole trip or their flight journey. And birds, some examples of these birds are like robins, for example. They're really small, but they can literally detect the Earth's magnetic field, and they use it to guide them in their long journeys. So I think the fact that they do that journey itself is very incredible, and it's really interesting to know that quantum principles are also part of it.
That's quite interesting. So they really have this quantum compass in their brain that's helping them navigate. Is that?
Yeah, I would kind of the idea comes this particular we have to go back a little bit to quantum physics or mechanics, where there's this principle called quantum entanglement. So two particles, for example, they can be connected in such a way that whatever happens to one affects the other. So it can be like one of them is in Earth and the other is in Mars also. So it's something like this that the birds basically use. So they have this molecule called cryptochrome. It's very sensitive to light. So that helps them understand like the spin, different states in the field. But when they use the quantum entanglement, like the electrons in that basically cryptochrome molecule, they can be, like, as I said, it's all the matter of time scale. So in these time scales, they can be in a special quantum state, in this entangled state. So the spin of one electron will be linked to the other one. So basically, that's why they are able to sense the Earth's magnetic field that way. So, and based on that, they move their direction and fly.
That I think that's incredible. I wouldn't have expected quantum physics to show up in such a context. Very
Yeah.
interesting indeed. And okay, maybe another question, a follow-up question I have is also about another phenomena where one would expect quantum physics to potentially show up, because I mean, something that we closely associate to quantum theory is this phenomenon of photoelectric effect. So there we have we know that. So the basis of this this effect is that light is being converted into electricity. And basically photons fall on atoms or on molecules, and depending on how that affects the state of this atom or molecule, electricity is being produced, and this kind of forms the basis of solar cells that we use commonly in day-to-day life. So as we think about it, another place where we would see this kind of light being converted into something else, of course in the context of biology, is photosynthesis. So here plants convert solar energy to chemical energy. So it's only natural for us to wonder whether there is a quantum link between these two phenomena. What's your take on it?
So yeah, right. There is actually a link. So for that too, we can take a small detour about another quantum principle called superposition. Basically, the fact that small particles, as you mentioned, like atoms, like electrons, or light particles, which are called photons, basically they can exist in many states at once. So you and I, we can only be in like exactly this position at this time. But for a light particle, that is not the case. So it can exist in multiple states at once. And it also helps the fact that it's sometimes they don't only behave like a particle, right? They also behave like a wave. They are spread out. So in the tiny quantum world, all that's possible. So this principle is basically used by the molecules in the leaves of the plants to use energy really, or to get the sunlight really efficiently to make the whole photosynthesis process efficient. So as you mentioned, there is a connection, and photosynthesis is like so important because it's like the first step of how a living thing directly uh, gets the sunlight and makes like food from it, and then helps other things also like survive. So plants also, they, I mean that, so they need sun, water, and all that to make their food. And we must have studied in school about how they, they take water and light and everything, and like basically in classical biology. But classical biology cannot explain how they do it so efficiently. Like, how does the plant know how to, how much and how to exactly when and which part to capture the sunlight, when they hit the plant's molecules? And now scientists have discovered that this quantum superposition might be the one that's actually helping the plants. So when a plant captures sunlight, so the particles of light in the plant, so the particles of light that hits the plant, um, what happens is the quantum mechanics, what it suggests that the plant's molecule might also exist in multiple state at once, because it's again really small. And this way, it allows them to explore all possible paths to find the most efficient way of converting the sunlight into energy. So it's mainly like it's like kind of like a quantum computer, where it's trying to see different pathways and seeing which is the most efficient one and just picking it. And all this happens, as I said, in a very small matter of like second or microseconds, because that's all the time that is allowed also. So this is like, yeah, one, I mean, more and more studies are actually only positively proving how the energy flow in a chloroplast is how it's efficiently done because of quantum superposition and those kind of principles.
That is quite interesting. So
And
from
sorry,
the
and as I
yeah,
show in the
of course.
picture here, which is what I wanted to, they do it even more efficiently than the solar cells. So that's
Oh, that's
because it's life, it's very important, they need it. So it could have been that they've evolved so efficiently that way that they do it like so much better. Like this, over, if you compare, then there's like a difference of like 70% of efficiency between a solar cell, like a man-made thing, and something like a plant.
Is there a do we know how this efficiency is being enhanced, or like how quantum physics is contributing to that high efficiency?
The high efficiency, I don't know if the answer is in quantum physics. I think it's more than in evolution. That could be biased because I'm evolutionary biologist, but I think that's how it has to be, because otherwise the principle is pretty same. The same, uh, that the fact that the molecules exist at different states and they can quickly see all the possibilities and choose the best one. Uh, I mean, maybe people can research a little more on the chloroplast itself and see if it works differently as compared to like a solar cell, uh, because that might also be possible. But the answer to that is exactly not known.
Okay, but maybe just a follow-up question to your last sentence. Is there something we can learn from chloroplast or from plants in general and use that to improve the efficiency of solar cells?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times nature is what inspires us to create uh, our human systems, just like how the birds flying inspired to make a plane and things like that. This can definitely be used if one exactly understands how chloroplast is efficiently doing it. Is it mostly only because of quantum principles, or is it also some evolutionary biology happening? Then one can use that in solar cells and other systems that humans make to make it more efficient. We can learn from nature.
Okay. So you already mentioned, explained to us very beautifully these two interesting concepts in quantum physics, namely superposition and entanglement. So whenever we hear about quantum physics, always we also hear about these two highly non-trivial counterintuitive phenomena that come with it. So we either have superposition, where we think of superposition as a particle being able to exist in multiple states at once, or entanglement, where a pair of particles can correlate with each other in a way that's not expected in our day-to-day life. So something that Einstein referred to as spooky action at a distance. So we, through your answers, we see that these counterintuitive phenomena, something that we don't encounter otherwise in our day-to-day life, is indeed happening at a molecular level within our bodies too. So that's very interesting. So as a quantum researcher but a theorist, I'm also very curious to know um, whether scientists have been able to validate these things in the lab. So when you talk about, say, birds using some kind of quantum mechanical effects to navigate, or chloroplast actually using quantum pathways to improve the efficiency, are those theoretical models that agree with the prediction, with the observations from the lab, or are there some kind of experiments that we can actually do in the lab to validate that, oh, this is actually what's happening, or we see that this is indeed what's happening?
Yeah, so like even few years before, it was mostly theoretical, but again, it was theoretical because they saw these things, like observed these things happening in nature and tried to make like very like basic experiments. So in biology, it's always like you observe something happening and then try to find out like one of the reasons why it could be. The answers could come from something which is already discovered in physics or something like that. And then you go back and check. So now, for example, this photosynthesis, like quantum mechanics in photosynthesis, for example, is being highly researched in many universities where they have, it's very interdisciplinary now. So I'm sure they have biologists, physicists, and all together working, and where they're trying to see, as just like the previous question you asked, exactly how it is doing it efficiently, because for example, they were able to measure that, okay, over 95% efficiency it's there, but how exactly, how is it able to like do it so much more efficiently? So things like that right now is under research. One could even say like experimental research in a way, because it's not just theory now. Theory beyond a point is not going to help us to see how this efficiency is there, for example. So in terms of this photosynthesis, I know that there are many labs that are doing this. Um, the bird navigation, it's in the rudimentary phase where they're trying to understand that cryptochrome molecule in the bird, and they have, for example, been able to um, prove, I would say, in a way that molecule, I think, yeah, like this spin basically, and that spin that's there with that molecule's electrons, so that they have been able to um, prove, like with this cryptochrome molecule that's in the birds. They've shown that it's very sensitive to light. They've also shown that it can affect the quantum spin of it and things like that. But again, using that, how exactly does it does the bird only rely on this, and how exactly um, it senses and continues its journey, things like that. Now that it's in the stage of like investigating right now. So and parallelly, they're also investigating the evolutionary part of it too, like how some birds, it just so happens that these birds who navigate long distances, they have this kind of molecules in their brains that helps them do that. So they also see that some birds, compasses take them to one part of the earth. There are some other birds that their compasses in their head take them to a different part of the earth. So why like that? Like, why are they all not going to the same place? Why are they born in such a way that they're taken to different places, even though they originate at the same place? Things like that, they're still working and trying to find. So the answer could be both in just chemistry or evolutionary biology and also quantum mechanics.
I see. I mean, for a theory, quantum physics uh, being like a theory that wasn't, I mean, there is a general conception around the theory that it's not very well understood, and there's so much skepticism around this particular branch of physics. So I personally think that. I mean, the theory being validated in systems that go well beyond the purview of physics, that's quite a big win
Yeah.
for the theory, if I may say so. But quite interesting. So you mentioned how. Like in these examples that we went through, you were explaining how, for instance, in photosynthesis, there's this factor of high efficiency, or in the case of bird migration, probably that's where accuracy comes into play. Birds are able to navigate accurately, possibly with the help of quantum physical phenomena. So can we make a general statement that quantum effects can be used to, say, enhance efficiency in biological processes, or maybe speed up chemical reactions if we go to a more basic level? Like, for instance, there are phenomena like quantum tunneling. Are they at all playing a role in making things easier or better in biological systems?
Yeah, they certainly are. And so a general statement where quantum tunneling can be used in everything in biology, I don't know again if there's enough proof for that, but so many biological systems, especially in our body, there's just more literature that keeps coming and showing how the quantum tunneling and other quantum effects are playing a key role for our efficient functioning itself, basically. Something as simple as, okay, if I'm smelling a flower, I'm immediately getting the smell of it. So here they are, for example, saying that quantum superposition can play a role because since particles can exist in many states, so maybe they are able to play a role in our smell too for efficiently uh, connecting with our olfactory molecules as well. But the other thing that you mentioned were quantum tunneling. So tunneling is like, classical physics. Let's say there is like a big mountain or something, and you're trying to go through it. You can't because it's really solid. You can't like pass. You have to climb the mountain and then only go the other side. Quantum tunneling in quantum world analogy would be like uh, the particle is so small and also spread out like a wave that it's possible for it to just go to the other side through basically like by creating a tunnel through that hill. So that uh, they have shown recently that that could be a big reason why we immediately, for example, something very simple like smelling a flower, it could be possible because if those particles did not behave that way, then it would take some more time for us to immediately recognize the smell. And we also recognize it so particularly like, okay, this is jasmine, this is rose, things like that. Like, but with things like quantum tunneling, the reaction time is much, much faster for us. So it makes it again more efficient. But this is something one can say it's very simple, like smells and things like that. But something very important is like in the enzymes in our body. So right from in the mitochondria, how our body basically produces the energy in there's so many processes involved in it from and so many enzymes are also used in it to go from one part of this from one state to the other state. So if they always only use like the classical mechanics, then it would take a long time for us to efficiently produce energy, or even even in general for any enzyme conversion and things like that. But they have but studies are slowly showing recently that a lot of chemical reactions in our body need to be really sped up. And what the enzymes do, I mean, enzymes usually do speed up reactions, but they do it so efficiently in our body or biological systems. Like I mentioned, that there is a whole hill, energy barrier. They don't have to go through it because of the quantum tunneling kind of effects. They can just tunnel through. So that way the reactions are happening much faster. So in the normal world, if it was just behaving like in the normal classical world, then it won't have it won't be that efficient. That's what they calculated. But because these tiny particles like our electrons, I mean, a lot of the electrons are very useful in catalyst and enzyme reactions and so on, or even like protons and things like that. So for them, instead of having to climb over that energy wall, just because they're tunneling through, it's just making things so efficient in our bodies, basically. So I would say quantum tunneling is very important, because otherwise, I mean, at least the literature that I have read, it just shows that it just really speeds up the processes so much. And if it wasn't the case, I don't know how nature could, like, we could live the way we do, we as in not just humans, but living things. Yeah.
That's quite insightful. So this, I mean, everything that you mentioned today, it all sounds so exciting and um, quite. I mean, it's basically, if I must say so, it changes entirely the way we think about quantum physics and what different ways it can influence our day-to-day life. So, really, in the context of International Year of Quantum, how would you assess the? I mean, what comments do you have for the future of this field of quantum biology? Like, what are some of the outstanding questions researchers such as yourself would like to answer or would like to keep working on?
As you mentioned earlier, you mentioned the two words earlier itself, like the efficiency and accuracy. How it's happening in all these systems that I mentioned, like from the photosynthesis phenomenon to the birds navigation or enzymes, how these enzymes are helping reactions happen faster than how classical physics or chemistry would make it happen. How exactly is it? I mean, sure, it is quantum tunneling and things like that, but the actual process, and the exact way it's doing it, I think would help one um, to understand the biological systems itself better. And of course, as you said, one can always use this to see how one can make our own systems like solar cells and all work more efficiently. So for that part of it too, but from the biology aspect itself, um, one can it can be made useful to understand how our systems work. Um, and some new things have also come, like we didn't like discuss in detail about it, but there's things like quantum imaging and so on that really helps again for both non-biological systems and also biological systems. So in medical and other applications, this quantum imaging really helps, because we know we can again see with quantum imaging, or also they say quantum sensing, the words, so we can see how exactly we can make much more precise measurements, basically. So I think personally, those quantum imaging, and of course quantum computers are also there. that are helping us solve things really fast. Again, it's the same principle of entanglement and superposition, where they are just like that photosynthesis molecule. All they can go through all the options and find like the best efficient one. So I think these ones would really help benefit um, not just biological but other systems as well. And research is going on in that too, so it's not something new I'm saying, but
Yeah, thanks for that answer. I mean, I'm curious to know what quantum biology has in store for all of us. Thank you, Dr. Vandana, for answering all my questions with such depth and clarity. This brings us to the end of the first part of our session. So now we will take questions from the audience as well. So like I mentioned earlier, our audience can ask questions either in English or Malayalam, and Dr. Vandana will answer the questions in English. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് അൺമ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്തിട്ട് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് ചോദിക്കാം, അതല്ലെങ്കിൽ ചാറ്റ് ബോക്സിൽ ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ഇടാം, ആൻഡ് വിൽ ബി ടേക്കിംഗ് ഫ്രം ദെയർ. നമുക്ക് ഓൾറെഡി ഇവിടെ ഒരു ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ഉണ്ട്. ദിസ് ഇസ് ഫ്രം ഫ്രാൻസിസ്. The question is that, as you mentioned, quantum physics is now offering deeper explanations for phenomena like photosynthesis and bird navigation. As research pushes the boundaries of our understanding, do you think the entire framework of biology will one day be explained through the principles of quantum physics? Very interesting question.
yeah, it's actually interesting. But in principle, maybe, but in practice, I'm not sure if entirely it can be explained. So you could maybe explain a lot of things in biology using quantum physics, but I think it goes back to the initial discussion that we had, where in biology, things are not just shaped by fixed things like physics and principles like quantum principles, so on. There's something called evolution also that's happening simultaneously. There are many rules and patterns within evolution too, but it's still noisy, and sometimes it's just chance too, you know. So it won't be possible, because just that one thing might be a reason why it can't be possible to explain everything in biology with physics or quantum physics. So it might underlie everything. It might underlie in the process, like how something evolved and or adapted in such a good way, like that birds that can fly. But I don't think it can explain the entire everything in biology, if that's what I meant. Yeah.
So it's unlikely that there is going to be like a theory of everything, and quantum physics is sort of like in the center of it.
Yeah, it would have been nice, but I doubt.
Fair enough. Okay, and then there is another question from AJ, and this was a question that I was kind of expecting to pop up in this discussion. Can consciousness be a quantum phenomenon?
Can consciousness, like, what do you mean by consciousness here? I just want to like our awareness, or is it something?
I think so, but that's my interpretation of the question. If the person asking the question, if you don't mind unmuting and maybe like further clarifying your question, that'll be helpful.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, like you mean like the brain activities in the brain and things like that, or?
Yeah. The brain activity is through neural, connections, right? But the perception of consciousness, right? Like where we feel we are living in the world, like we can interact with the world and have a sense of self. These kind of things, like we are still not able to fully explain consciousness, right? Exactly how it is emerging in a brain.
I don't
So
know if it's fully explained even with like classical physics or science. So I'm not sure how much this is a much more noisy environment. So I'm not sure if we can explain this, or even if we need to explain this using quantum effects. But personally, I don't know if there's any studies that's going on in terms of like, I mean, the underlying fact of how the electrical and chemical signals are moving in our neural net, like our brains and things like that. Maybe a little bit they can be explained by quantum effects, but the overall of neuroscience, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
And there's another question from the same person. So earlier you mentioned efficiency of photosynthesis is about 95%. Does that mean 95% of incident sunlight is being converted into the chemical reactions output? Yeah, that's the question.
95%. You're asking like, what do I mean by efficiency here, right?
Yeah. What do you mean by that? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I wasn't saying that it's going to convert like 95% of the sunlight into chemical energy, because even in like ideal lab conditions, I think it would be like only like a single digit. Here we are talking about how by the 95% I mean here is about the energy transfer, basically, between if the like if the plants could it's mostly about like, yeah, the energy it's not an exact 95% here. I'm not saying that it does not mean that the 95% of sunlight is converted into chemical energy. That if that's your question, then that's not it is. So it's more like a figure they found out about like energy delivery and energy transfer. That's the calculation that they're getting as 95%, not the not the fact that 95% of sunlight is used to convert into chemical energy. If
Yeah, just I wanted to, like you mentioned, right, research is going on in increasing, like, I mean, solar panels and these things can, I mean, contribute to each other. So just thinking in that area, but yeah, thanks
yeah,
for.
no, that would be nice, but no, yeah.
Okay,
If
moving
you're
on.
about the sunlight into chemical energy, then yeah, no.
Okay, maybe we can move on to the next question. This is by Balamohan Ramaswamy. How can we feel quantum experiences at physics or biology lab? Do we have any simple hands-on experiments?
Hands-on experiments. For physics, I think there are like, I think usually like what we do in school or college, like with light, if we can do like a double slit experiments, then we can see these interference patterns, for example. But again, for that, I don't know if it can be something. I mean, if you're really good at building stuff, you can do it at home too. But in a school or college lab, it's possible to see, for example, quantum physics or basic quantum mechanics effects, let's say, through like a double slit experiment. And I think quantum biology, I don't think it's possible to do like a hands-on or experimental things in like a very basic lab, but the labs that are working on these kind of things have their own special labs where they have high like level lasers and things like that, where they can measure the energy transfer in all these light harvesting particles. Yeah. But those labs are like very complicated. labs, yeah, but it's still possible. It's still a lab and it's possible. But if you're asking for like some basic hands-on, I'm going to assume you're asking like something like a school laboratory or something. There, I think the simple thing we can do is if there is a spectroscope to see how the chlorophyll absorbs light, that is something we can do. But beyond that, the quantum effect part of it would require a little more complex lab. Just like, for example, an example. Yeah.
Okay, so in the interest of time, we can take one last question, and we already have it on the chat box from Aravindakshan Parangada. Do quantum studies on leaves help us improve the function of photovoltaic cells?
Yeah, so as we discussed earlier too, I mean, this is people are actually studying it, and it's very important research going on too, because it's, as I mentioned, it's good for biology also, but also for our humankind's survival, because we now need to go things like solar energy and things like that. So for that, studying these exactly how this quantum effects efficiently happen in photosynthesis or leaves can inspire design in the solar energy or like photovoltaic cells. And as I mentioned, how in the energy transfer stage, it's up to as high as 95%. We can certainly learn what's happening in biology and use that to create better photovoltaic cells.
Okay. We have one raised hand, so maybe we can take that question as well.
Yeah, okay. My name is Narayanan, and thank you for this wonderful lecture, Vandana and Shalini both. In the last 40 minutes when you discussed this word consciousness doesn't come. It is quite surprising because this is what is quantum physics for most of us. I mean, I studied physics a little bit, but for a common man, quantum physics, the moment you say quantum physics, it's switched to consciousness and discussions into a different terrain. So, but being a scientist who is working on the biological systems, okay, scientists are open to all kinds of ideas, but do you foresee any kind of convergence, a benefit of doubt for such thoughts in future, or is that kind of activities are going on anywhere in the world?
I think I don't understand your question. Like, what kind of experiments are going on in the world? Like, what?
Okay, I'll come again. Like, the no, the discussions in the common people's level, like for me, moment we listen about quantum, it's connect to the consciousness and so many other levels. But as a scientist, and this has been going on for quite some time, from Schrodinger's time to even now, as a biological scientist, so do you foresee or you give any even a benefit of doubt to such discussions?
By consciousness, if you're talking about the scientific endeavor to
Okay.
understand neuroscience and things like that, then yes. But if you're talking about stuff like that Sri Ravi Shankar talks about, then
No. I'm not talking about. This is precisely my questions. The moment we talk about this kind of thing, as a serious scientist, there is a kind of long distance between scientist and the Sri Ravi Shankar kind of thing. Everyone will make fun of each other. I mean, as a scientist, I cannot afford to do that. Sri Ravi Shankar can do it. So in this context, as a scientist, do you see any possibility of convergence in the future? Because this is like scientists are usually very open to the situation, not like Sri Devi Shankar or Sadhguru or so many other people. But as a scientist, I would like to know your opinion about this. This question is both to you and Shalini.
when you asked if there would be any convergence, I would hope that there's a positive convergence where Sadhguru and Sri kind of people listen to talks like this, or even better talks and books, and understand that what they're saying has nothing to do with quantum physics or anything like that. that kind of conversions would be nice, that they realize, I think they probably already know, but people realize that there's a difference between science and what I say, pseudoscience is the word, where you just use words like quantum, things like that, and make it sound scientific, but it's not. I
Yeah,
just hope,
absolutely. I agree with that, because that is, I appreciate the fact that you did not use, that is what I said in the beginning, that you did not use the word consciousness in the whole 42 minutes of conversation.
yeah.
Yeah, indeed, that should tell us something, right?
And I think Kamala Menon had a question, and I cannot not answer her question. It said, she asked if, do leaves also have special cells? Yeah, they do. Just like our body, we have different kinds of cells here and there. Um, Plants, for example, we have like the stomata kind of cells. And then there is the epidermal cells that help with water regulation, things like that. The stuff we were talking about today is this mesophile kind of cells where this photosynthesis basically happens. So it's full of these chloroplasts and things like that. So yeah, leaves have specialized cells, and some of them very different from like what we have, and so on.
I mean, we are getting a lot of questions, but in the interest of time, we should also wind up at some point. So maybe this is the absolute last question, contrary to what I said before. So we have one on chat box, and we'll probably conclude after that. So the question is: do quantum uncertainty principle lead to any biological uncertainty? That's the first question. Second question is: what is the potential barrier involved in tunneling?
So do quantum uncertainties lead to any biological uncertainty? I don't know if they lead to it. I mean, in general, with uncertainty principle, what it says is that even if we have the best tools to measure things, it's the fundamental like limit, let's say, of nature, that if you want to find position precisely, then you will lose the precision in finding the momentum or speed and direction. If you want to find the precise energy, then you might lose the precision in finding the time and things like that. So um, the the uncertainty principle, if you're trying to measure something in biology, then sure. But if you're talking just about biology in general, then I don't know if there will be any noticeable difference. Of course, unless if you look at like the atomic or molecular level, then for sure. But um, at a larger level, it's may not have any noticeable difference. Like we were talking about this photosynthesis. So there may be uncertainty. Um, it I don't know if it really has a big effect on it, but in this quantum tunneling that's used in enzyme for much more speeding up of the chemical reactions, then there may be uncertainty in energy and position. Maybe they affect how the protons can like tunnel through. Uh, so subtly, it might be possible. Yeah, but it would, yeah.
Okay, and the second question of potential barrier involved in tunneling.
What's the potential barrier involved in tunneling? Oh, okay. So it's in biology and physics, the same idea that I was trying to show, that there is like a hill or a wall. So it's like normally in classical, if it was just classical physics, then there would be, if there's a whole energy wall or potential, you have to like cross through it and go through. And for that, you need like a lot of energy. So if you're looking like at a big ball or something like that, that has to go over a hill, then it won't if it doesn't have enough energy, it won't reach the other side of the hill. It will just come back. But in quantum physics or quantum mechanics, quantum science, we're looking at very tiny particles like electrons. So the fact that they also have like waves, like the duality principle, like they're not just particles but also waves. They are basically spread out, so they can easily leak through the barrier. So they don't have to like have so much energy to like cross the whole energy hill or potential, but can leak through. So even if they don't have that much energy, there is like a chance that the particle will come to the other side of the hill potential. So yeah, so it's similar. The end in biology too, we're only talking about small atoms like electrons and so on. So there, it's the same. The underlying effect is very similar in biology and physics. It's just the quantum principle.
Mhm. Okay, so with that answer, we have come to the conclusion of today's event. Thank you, Dr. Vandana, for explaining to us what quantum biology is and what various interesting phenomena we have as a consequence of quantum physics interfering in biological systems. Are there any concluding remarks that you would like to add, or something that we didn't get a chance to discuss today?
We mostly discussed all the important like principles. One thing I wanted to mention was how this field is still in the idea of the field of finding all the quantum underlying effects within biological system is still rudimentary, and there's a lot of possibilities uh, for more research and things like that in the future. So yeah, it's just another exciting new thing that's coming up probably. Yeah.
Okay. All right, with this, let's thank Dr. Vandana again. Thank you so much for a very insightful discussion on a Sunday. Well, actually, also Sunday morning for you, probably early in the morning. Also, just to the audience, thank you for joining us today. And if you have any more questions, or if you would like to learn more about what Dr. Vandana is doing, like I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, she has some very active social media handles where she shares her research with us. Please do check those out. And yes, thanks everyone again. Over to you, Francis.
Okay, thank you. It was a wonderful science conversation and a wonderful evening. Okay, we learned a lot. Okay, Dr. Vandana has put much effort to prepare this, we know, and it is an unlikely timing for her. And early Sunday morning, she has agreed to do it. And also Shalini, she has taken much effort to make this conversation lively and in this structure. Okay, thank you, Dr. Shalini. On behalf of science people, I thank the speaker, the moderator, and all our audience for coming and making it a great evening. Okay, after we are stopping the live and the recording here. If you have a few more minutes, please stay on. Let me see.